Hello. So since Alpha went live, a little bit earlier today, there has been some data mining for a lot of the classes that do not have talent trees. A lot of you have probably already seen this, but I want to talk a little bit about it because in particular there was some interesting new Frost talents which could, show how they're going to treat the spec going forward into Dragonflight. I know a lot of people are kind of more in favor of them removing icy repulsion, so we'll talk about that. But here's the disclaimer. Basically, these are just effects that they found in the Dragonflight files that could have been updated or whatnot. So it's very much preliminary, right? We won't know what the Mage talent tree looks like for a little bit. The next one they're releasing, they confirmed, is the Shaman one, so we probably won't see the Mage one for at least a week. So anyway, if we're going to talk a little bit about, the general tree, then a little bit about the Frost tree, make it quick, give a little bit of an opinion. Radiant Spark, I really, right? It's an arcane spell. It's only for arcane. I don't think any of the other specs really like it. I don't really like it for Frost. I don't like it for Fire. It just doesn't work out well for them generally. I think it works better with the new iteration of Frost that looks like they're trying to push towards, where Flurry is a charge-based system instead of just being a proc from Frostbolt. Because when you play Radiant Spark as Frost, what you do is you Flurry and then you Ice Lance, and that's like your Radiant Spark consumption. So it would work better with a charge-based system because it's reliable, at least. Shifting Power felt great in AoE for both Frost and Fire, and it would probably feel good for Arcane. The one thing to note is it is only 10 seconds, and there's never been a time in Fire, at least, that you've had only 10 seconds of Shifting Power, because you always use Discipline of the Grove, so it might make Combustion feel a little bit slower than it is now, or a lot slower, because, depending on if they actually include the tier set and whatnot, and you might have a lot less Fire Blast and Phoenix Flame charges. So talking a little bit about the general talents, one thing I didn't like is, well, here you can see they just have 5 conduits, which is fine. I like Incantation of Swiftness. I'm glad if that stays, that'd be great. Flow of Time, meh. Diverted Energy, I feel like this and Tempest Barrier, it should only be one of them that continues. Mages do not need this much survivability, right? You don't need Cryo Freeze, you don't need Diverted Energy and Tempest Barrier, and then all these Mirror Image talents. That's a little too much, in my opinion. You do have to keep their survivability, to a level that's reasonable. I don't like either of these talents. I think they're pretty bad. But again, they don't have number scaling. You would never probably take this reabsorption, because this would only ever happen generally in open world content. It could happen if you use your Mirror Image after you have threat in like Mythic Plus, but you should be precasting it, so that wouldn't do anything. And this would be fine if the cooldown reduction was more, but also same problem. You're probably not gonna have your Mirror Image get dissipated due to direct damage. So, and I actually do like Time Anomaly, so hopefully this is tuned well. It is quite a bit RNG, but it is kind of satisfying RNG to see proc, especially when it procs like your main cooldown, like Icy Veins or Arcane Surge now for them. Seeing it proc Combustion would be very interesting. I feel like that would be very strange for Fire. And I think this is a good talent. It's basically just that Warlock conduit for the Demonic Circle, but it might lead to more people actively using Alter Time. I feel like that's something that a lot of mages generally kind of miss out on, especially ones that are newer to the spec, is they just don't cast Alter Time as much as they should. So, and then just talking about Frost, this doesn't really matter. It's basically just a 10% damage buff during your Ice Lances after your Flurry, because you'll still cast Frostbolt into Flurry, of course, so you just get a 10% damage buff on Ice Lance there. Other than that, I'm not really sure why this exists, but it will just mean when you're spamming out this Frostbolt, you're pretty likely to have a potentially 30% damage dealt buff, which is kind of strong, especially since like Ice remains, I suppose. This is strange. I think that the way this is meant to be is basically you would just take 2% damage to frozen targets in Mythic Plus because you are shattering everything with Frost Nova generally. I think that's a playstyle that's going to continue into Dragonflight more than likely, especially with whatever Datamined talents we have right now. And then the chilled targets is just a math thing in single target, whether you're getting enough flurries to make that worth it, because your Fingers of Frost is probably going to count towards this right side. So Cold Front, that's okay. You know, it was a interesting talent. It's okay. I mean, it wasn't great outside Deathborn. In Deathborn, it was kind of satisfying, but it also wasn't very fun to ignore Ice Lance. So I'm less a fan of that. It's just because this incentivizes an ignore Ice Lance playstyle. Though, of course, it does have this, which seems to be a passive, right? Which that would be nice if this wasn't, you know, tied to a very long cooldown. Just give you some additional cleave that gives you Cold Front. But I do like this. Of course, this is probably most famous for enabling Glacial Spike, but you know, a chance to get Fingers of Frost from your icicles is nice. But it does have a high chance to proc munch, because the time when your icicles are hitting the target the most is right after you Ice Lance, and you Ice Lance during your first, you know, Flurry Winter's Chill debuff, and then you still have another one to go. But all your Ice Lances all your icicles get released the first time you Ice Lance. So 5 icicles are going to be going to hit a target when you still have to Ice Lance another time. So you could proc much, which is not great. I do like Freezing Winds staying. Hopefully they revert the Frozen Orb nerf. Frigid Shattering seems decent in Mythic Plus, especially if we're able to keep shattering a couple spells, which it seems like we might want to. Frostbite's going to be completely useless. Glacial Assault is essentially just the 2-set from before, which is cool. It doesn't look like it has a cooldown, potentially, and it'd be interesting if this chance is, well, it says each strike, so it might be like a 60% chance per flurry, which seems quite strong. And this does, you know, tie in with the fact that it's implied that Icy Propulsion is still there, which is good, because this would be necessary, basically. Actually, it does say it's an Icy Comet, and one of the main reasons that Comet Storm is so strong is because it hits 7 times and not once. So that's why it's so strong for Icy Propulsion. But here, that's okay. You know, it's just passive damage. But these two might increase the value of Mastery, which would be good to not have a relatively dead stat as Frost, of course. But they are very passive and do literally nothing for your rotation. So I like to see Icicles potentially be a little more active in some way. This is their way of reducing the RNG of Flurry, is making a charge-based system. That's totally fine. It's either this or they do the fire route of every, you know, fireball, frostbolt increases your chance to generate a proc. So either one's great. I think that the charge system's probably better, but right now the recharge time is set to 40 seconds, which seems a bit excessive in my opinion. But again, you know, the talent trees aren't even out yet, so very much numbers not set in stone. Slick Ice, I don't really care if this comes back. I think it's kind of boring, so hopefully it's not like an end capstone talent tree row or whatnot, because it's just, you know, you don't pay attention to it really. This is fine. Snowstorm, I do like this. I think Kona Cold doing a lot of damage is fun. Well, it was a lot of fun in Classic, so giving you more incentive to shatter more things is a good thing, in my opinion. And then this doesn't matter at all, so that's it, really. That's all there is to talk about. The only other thing to mention is Shatter is now not Frost spells only. That's not going to change anything. This isn't Classic where you're going to like Flame Strike a Frost Nova target. So realistically, unless they include a very strong general talent, it's not going to do much. And then they have Water Jet coming back, which I think people like. So that's good. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else to talk about. So if you hadn't heard about this, you know, maybe this was interesting for you to listen to. If you had, hopefully I gave a good perspective for it. I'm not going to talk about the other specs, aside from it's nice that it looks like Fire is going to get... Where is it? That's going to get Phoenix Flames always critting, which would be nice to have again. And then Arcane looks like they're trying to go for a mini rework. Always great to see like a little mini rework for classes. So, all right, have a good day. Leave any questions or comments or whatnot in the chat, and hopefully this was interesting, like I said before. So